my son, and he sent me some videos, and it is alarming.
The shenanigans of Chirac, Jacksonville, okay, all these other places, Philadelphia, all that. Listen, man, that's not New York City. New York City's a whole different beast.
Over the course of 3.5 years, they carried out at least 32 violent crimes.
It was beefs and slights and disrespects that all drove some of these incidents.
That was done, investigators say, through drill rap videos.
And you'll never ever get long-standing crime or people who are repping gangs who are going to be dominating the scene in New York and also dominating the music scene as well. Okay, that's just the reality of things.
They call people out directly. They make fun of incidents, individuals that have perished prior to gunfire, opposing gang members.
But they have to realize New York is not the place. New York will not be the home of where y'all think y'all could just act recklessly in the street and then make songs about it, taunting your enemies. Never will happen, and this is gonna be the consequence every single time.
Over the past 2 years, the Bronx drill movement has caught the attention of the whole world. Kids who were 9 and 10 when Chief Keef first blew have grown up and finally gotten their turn to put a spotlight on the craziness that's been going on in their borough for decades. Stars have skyrocketed up in the movement and fallen just as quickly. These songs have been released that are so wild, they make King Von's most disrespectful songs sound like YouTuber diss tracks. Teenagers have lost their lives and been mocked relentlessly by their ops, to the point where it seems like anything goes. The mayor of New York City even considered banning the genre as a whole, and everything has been broadcasted for tens of millions of people across the world to tune into. So today, let's take a look at the rise of Bronx drill. South Bronx is the home of Bronx drill, and this has been a rough place since the 70s when the borough had an outbreak of fires and 97% of its buildings ended up burning. During this time, the tough, impoverished conditions the youth of the Bronx found themselves in ended up being expressed in the creation of hip-hop. Time went on and the fires stopped, but the poverty continued and the Bronx remained the poorest borough in the entire city. Gangs were always present, and in the 70s and 80s, Italian mobs controlled large parts of the South Bronx, but in the 90s, the black and brown gangs began to take over. As time went on, these gangs caught indictments and lost their structure, so by the early 2000s, these organizations had devolved into teenagers chasing each other around with straps. Fast forward 20 years, and the Bronx found itself in the same situation. The only difference was, a huge opportunity was about to present itself to allow some of these kids to monetize this pain and misery. 2020 was the year Pop Smoke lost his life, causing the Brooklyn drill movement to fade out. It looked like New York's run was over, but another drill movement was actually in its infant stages. In the Bronx, some of the movement's early pioneers were just getting started. Rappers like D-Thang, T-Dot, Shy K, and Spaz Drilly had been rapping since 2019, but despite living in New York, none of them were rapping on Brooklyn drill beats. But in 2020, they all started to turn towards the Brooklyn drill sound. This same year, rappers like K-Flock, B-Love, Dougie B, and E-Dot Baby were also beginning their careers rapping on Brooklyn drill beats as well. Like every drill movement, there were different gangs that each rapper was representing. K-Flock repped the gang called DOA, aka Southside. D-Thang repped the gang called YGs, aka G's. Shy K repped the gang called OGs. E-Dot Baby repped the gang called OY, aka Sugar Hill. And Spaz Drilly repped the gang called the Drillies. Around this time, it was basically all the gangs against the YGs and the Drillies. And rappers from these rival gangs went back and forth on tracks, just like others before them in Brooklyn and Chicago. Nobody blew up immediately out the gate, but early in the year, T-Dot and D-Thang saw success with tracks like RPT Buggin' Part 1 and 2, Shy K had Shooter Get Shot, Spaz Drilly had Bunny Hop, and E-Dot Baby had Ready for War. B-Love also saw early success with this song Through the Coat, and later in the year, K-Flock would join him and they would do numbers on songs like Op Spotter and Speed Racing. Like all the past movements, disses were tossed back and forth, But from the beginning, D-Thang and Shaik had the biggest rivalry between any of the Bronx pioneers. They had a strong hate for each other and were basically competing to see who could be the most disrespectful. They dissed each other by name and said they were smoking on each other's dead homies on a regular basis. And as time went on, things only got worse. All drill music is aggressive, but rappers like K-Flock and Shaik were bringing a level of aggression rarely seen before. And this aggression would become more and more popular and a distinguishing part of Bronx drill as it progressed, with some even taking it so far that they started doing impressions of Batman. Another trend that was spread across Bronx drill was switching up the vibe of the beats. D-Thang and T-Dot were rapping on beats with the same style of drums as those from Brooklyn, but more happy sounding melodies, different from the dark, ominous sound of Brooklyn drill. And this would also form into a staple of Bronx drill. Toward the end of 2020, the Bronx drill scene was picking up steam and appeared to be on the edge of blowing up. 2021 was the year it reached the mainstream. In March, K-Flock, B-Love, and Dougie B dropped Brotherly Love and hit 1 million views in a month. It was clear that they had the potential to really take off. Everybody was going up, but K-Flock was separating himself from the pack. He was mainly doing songs with his friends, but he was clearly the star, and fans wanted to see him do more solo records. Around this time, the Bronx drill scene was also getting crazier and crazier. Basically, all of the gangs were turning EBK. In 2020, K-Flock, Dougie B, and Shaik were on good terms, doing songs together and shouting each other out. But something happened, and by the middle of 2021, DOA had fell out with the OI and OG's gangs, and members were adding K's to each other's sets, as well as dissing each other's dead members. B-Love was OG's, but had lived in DOA territory, and was good friends with K and Dougie, but still cool with Shaik, and he managed to stay neutral, but Sha would end up going at it with Dougie and K. Despite falling out with DOA, Shaik continued to put out bangers throughout 2021 and dissed the YGs repeatedly on songs like D&D and One in the Head. D&D ended up blowing up on TikTok and giving Shaik a big boost. Shaik was one of the more disrespectful drill rappers, but even his level of dissing was nothing compared to where other rappers were starting to take it. Over on the Drilly side, Spaz Drilly, who was the former face of the Drillies, had gotten locked up in 2020. Lee Drilly decided that it was up to him to take Spaz Drilly's place and pick up where he left off. So in February of 2021, he dropped a song called Final Destination with over 40 disses and shots at basically all the rappers from the hood he was beefing with, as well as their dead members. And this would set the trend of the Drillies and the YGs being the two most disrespectful hoods. Obviously, with all these shots being thrown at them, the other gangs had to respond with similar levels of disrespect. One of the most disrespectful rappers to emerge from DOA was a rapper called Nazi BK. He came out dissing rivals and smoking their dead basically every song, and saw a lot of success on records like Bunny in the Box and OYK. Alongside him, another big DOA rapper named Set the Trend was also doing his thing. In June, another rapper heavy on the dissing also started his career. Use G's dropped his first song, Warzone, dissing 6 dead ops and all the poppin' rappers he had beef with, and the track took off. Use G's was a rising star for the YGs, but D-Thang was still leading the movement, dropping consistent bangers as well as consistently dissing his ops. Throughout early 2021, D-Thang was starting to take off and growing at around the same pace as his cousin K-Flock. The main rapper he was dissing was Shaik, but on one particular song, he decided to throw a shot at B-Love, and B-Love ended up responding with the hit. In July, B-Love dropped a song called If You Know You Know, where he dissed D-Thang back, and the song took off and went on to get millions of views. This was also the first Bronx drill song to use a sample. The use of samples in New York drill wasn't new, and YouTube producers had been making these types of beats for a while, but B-Love brought the sound to the Bronx and popularized it. Going into the summer, the music was heating up, but the violence was as well, and DOA would end up losing 2 members named J-Rip and Nazi, and the YGs also lost 2 members named Ty Swish and Rajeez. All of these names would be brought up and dissed, especially Ra, and one of the main rappers dissing him would be K-Flock. Going into August, K-Flock was the hottest rapper in the Bronx, and he only had 1 solo song. He had gotten signed in July, and was ready to start his solo act. In August, he dropped Is You Ready, and the song went crazy. He dissed his cousin D-Thang, saying he would do him like Ice did Sonny, a paid in full reference that was K saying he could get him off. He also dissed Nesty Flocks, Raji's, and Eat Out Baby. The track was fire and it took off, going viral, gaining millions of views. He followed this track up with another one called Being Honest, which was a heartfelt song about what K had been going through in the streets, losing close friends. And the song was also very popular with fans. This same month, CJ Goon, Shai K, and 30 teamed up on a track called How You Every Old Shot, taking shots at D-Thang as well as DOA. The YG's response came in September when D-Thang, Bando, and T-Dot dropped a song called Talk Facts, one of the most disrespectful tracks in music history. D-Thang responded to what CJ had said on How You Every Old Shot, and him, Bando, and T-Dot basically dissed every hood in the Bronx. DOA, OGs, SB, OY, Highbridge, everybody. The song had a total of 44 disses, and at least 20 of them were dead ops. There are cases when a song only blows up because of how disrespectful it is, but the song was genuinely fire and followed the new trend of sampling popular records containing a melody from the song Somebody That I Used To Know. The level of disrespect, combined with the fact that the song was genuinely good and had a catchy melody, caused the record to go crazy viral, getting millions and millions of views and putting even more eyes on the Bronx drill movement. K-Flock was already starting to get some mainstream attention, and Talk Facts blowing up gave a different perspective on the movement and created an interesting narrative with K and D-Thang being blood cousins who were on opposite sides of street beef, who both ended up becoming rappers in the faces of their respective gangs. YouTube channels like Hip Hop Daily started making videos about the beef going on in the Bronx, adding to the already growing spotlight. But unfortunately, D-Thang wouldn't be able to capitalize much off of the new attention because in November he was arrested for criminal possession of a firearm and would have to sit in jail. Meanwhile, K-Flock was continuing his rise. In October, he was featured on the Lil TJ record alongside Fabio Foreign, giving him even more mainstream attention. Then in November, he dropped his debut project, the DOA tape. Everything was going up for him. Then on November 24th, New York City police put up a wanted poster with K-Flock's picture saying he was wanted for murder. And in January, he turned himself in. It was revealed that the whole thing was captured on camera. And the tapes revealed that K-Flock had been walking through his ops hood when he passed a barber shop. An OY member named Oscar left the shop, followed him, and confronted him. K backed out and upped it on him, taking his life. The whole situation was a crazy turn of events. In the prior months, he had been blowing up at a crazy rate, with many projecting his career to take off at the same trajectory as Pop Smoke. But he had blown it and was now looking at 20 plus years behind bars. With K-Flock and D-Thang behind bars, it looked like the Bronx might suffer the same fate in 22 that Brooklyn faced in 2020, with the loss of Pop Smoke. But luckily, smaller Bronx drill rappers ended up capitalizing on the opportunity and keeping the movement alive. Lee Drilly had only started in February of 2021, but by August of that year, he was already preparing to go on a crazy run. In September, he had dropped a song called Deadly with E-Woo and Say Drilly that was just as disrespectful as Talk Facts, and had continued to make a name for himself off his skill, his unique style, and his commitment to dissing his ops on basically every song. In fall of 2021, while Lee Drilly had been heating up, Shai K had taken a step back from music, but around the end of December, he returned with Force FK, 2 songs combined into one, and both were extremely disrespectful, with him taking shots at DOA and the YGs. The video took off quickly, gaining 1 million views in a short period of time. Similarly to Lee Drilly, UGs, who had also just started rapping in 2021, had been rising quickly throughout the year off heavy dissing. In October, he had dropped a song called Dead Lokes, continuing his habit of being extremely disrespectful and dissing as many people as possible, as well as continuing to perfect his new Batman voice. The song went viral, and he followed this up with We Been Ready, a response to K-Flock's song Is You Ready, on the same beat. Then, on Christmas, one day after Shai K had dropped Force FK, he dropped a song called Face of the Bronx. Shai K didn't like him claiming this title, and 2 weeks later he dropped a song called Face of the Wet, where he said that UG was not the face of the Bronx. The song went crazy, and to this day, it's the most viewed video on his channel, at a count of 7.5 million. Starting 2022 out with the song blowing up and K and D-Thang gone, Shy K was the biggest rapper in the Bronx, and him and UG's continued to go back and forth, making their music as disrespectful as possible. But Shy K was outshining everybody and hitting 1 million+ views regularly while he was still independent. With the explosion of K-Flock and rappers like D-Thang and Shy K all getting millions of views, the Bronx drill scene had more attention than ever, and one of the people watching was the mayor of New York's son. Eric Adams, who was the mayor of New York, had never heard of drill until his son sent him some videos. Looking at the songs from a neutral point of view, the music was clearly bad for the city. You had gang members pouring gas on already hot fire with threats of violence as well as taunts of what they had already done, and Eric Adams felt he had to do something about it. So he had a conference to let the people know that he was going to try to reach out to some of the social media companies to try to get them to remove some of the videos. The news went everywhere that Eric Adams was trying to ban drill, and fans started panicking, and the rappers weren't too happy to see that they might be canceled.
Listen, Eric, leave me the f alone. I'm rapping, I'm getting money, I ain't doing that wrong.
Luckily for them, Eric Adams didn't actually end up doing anything about the situation. And he would end up being the least of DOA's worries, because without K-Flock, his homies were lost. Dougie B and Nazi BK were barely putting out music, and to make matters worse, they even ended up falling out and beefing. But they would later be seen on the stage together, leading many to believe they squashed it. B-Love was doing his thing, working with people like G Herbo and A Boogie, and he wasn't as lit as when K was free, but he was making styles of music outside of drill, and it looked like he was on pace to make a career that would last. So things were looking bad for DOA and good for the OGs, but for the YGs and the Drillies, things ended up going horribly. In April, Lee Drilly and 19 other Drilly members would catch a huge indictment, tying them to all sorts of crimes going as far back as 2018. Then in May, D-Thang and 22 other YG's members from the RPT projects were named in a huge conspiracy indictment, and it became clear that D-Thang, who had already been sitting in Rikers on his gun case, would not be going anywhere anytime soon. UG's wasn't included in this indictment and continued to put on for the gang, but over the course of the year, he would end up beefing with the Drillies repeatedly, first over a song he did with one of their ops, and then over a messy breakup with the girl who was a sister of a Drilly member. And things would end up getting to the point where UG's declared that he was Drilly K. Over in Harlem on the OY side, E-Dot Baby was staying consistent, and Sugar Hill King was starting to take off, doing numbers on songs like Flock at the Flockas and Can't Wait. And alongside him, OY Quan was also starting to do his thing. As a whole, the Bronx drill movement had motion, but all the rappers behind bars and internal beefs had killed a lot of its momentum. But a new star would still end up emerging, and he would catch the world's attention in a tragic way. In July of 2022, an OY member called Nadi Osama was stabbed in an altercation on the subway and ended up losing his life at the young age of 14. Nadi and his brother Didi Osama had just recently started rapping earlier that year, and the large amount of publicity around his death brought a lot of new listeners to Didi. He capitalized on his new attention and began dropping consistently. As a result, his music took off at an extreme pace. He started gaining millions and millions of views, and his biggest song, 40s and 9s, went crazy, hitting 7 million views in a couple of months. In August, he passed every other rapper in the Bronx and Harlem in terms of searches, and became the face of the movement at the young age of 15. His explosion onto the scene even caught the attention of major labels, and in September, Didi ended up signing with Alamo. Alongside Didi, his friend and fellow OY member Sugar Hill D-Dot, who's a year younger than him, was also starting to see his career take off alongside Didi, doing hundreds of thousands of views on basically all of his songs. But everybody wasn't a fan of Didi and the OYs. They had problems with several groups, and one of these groups was called 41. In October, this group made an extremely disrespectful song along with a dance to Mock Nadi, and it ended up going viral, shocking the entire internet. The dance part was new, but the unfortunate trend of dissing the dead, no matter their age, had already been set, so the situation didn't surprise anybody familiar with the scene. And the situation even ended up benefiting Didi Osama, bringing him more attention and adding to his growing fame. This brings us to the present day. K-Flock, D-Thing, and Lee Drilly are still behind bars. B-Love and Shaik K are still big and doing solid numbers. And Didi Osama has jumped all the way to the front of the movement. It looks like the Bronx's best days are behind it, but things might not be over yet. We'll just have to wait and see. But one thing is certain, the entire story of the Bronx and Harlem drill has been crazy to watch. From early 2020 to 2022, a lot has happened. The movement formed in a very small period of time and caught the world's attention quickly. We saw K-Flock go on a legendary run and crash out and set himself up to lose everything. There's been a lot of good music, but also a lot of death in a lot of cases. Whether the movement has been a net positive or negative is still up for debate, but it's certainly been unforgettable.